Story 1. I'm sure this is supposed to be more along the lines of ghost stuff, but I'm going to tell you about the most scared I've ever been in my life. Last year, a friend of mine passed away. We'll call him Charlie. I'm in the army, and he had taken some frag to the leg in Iraq, but he pulled through, so it came out of nowhere. His death was a bit of a personal matter, but all you guys need to know is that my other friend, who I'll call Bill, took it very hard. This guy, Bill, has been my best friend in the military. He's that guy who everyone wants to hang around, a perfect blend of friendliness and confidence. He knows what is important, what isn't, and most of all, he truly cares for people. Everyone who reads this will know the type of person I'm talking about. Anyhow, he's my best friend I've ever had, bar none. So, a week or so later, Charlie's family fly out to the nearby town, and we all decide to have a bit of a memorial. I'm not yet 21 at this point, so I get to play the DD. My buddy Bill is hitting the bottle hard, doing shots with everyone, downing pitchers left and right. As the night goes on, he seems to get more and more serious until about 1 a.m. Bill walks up to me and says, "Hey, come outside with me while I smoke." We both go out. He sits on a concrete block out in the parking lot and stares at the ground for a while. Then he says the scariest thing I've ever heard someone say. "Dagatos, after I go home tonight, I'm going to kill myself." Naturally, I start to freak out and start to try and talk him down. I end up in tears. He's telling me how he hates himself. I hit him in the face. He starts to break down a bit. Stuff started to go a little crazy. My squad leader ended up walking up to us, and that is the only time I've ever told him to fuck off and leave me alone. I won't leave you guys with some cliffhanger. Long story short, a few other friends come over and talk to him. After he's had a good talk and gotten some feelings out, I throw him in my car. Mind you, I'm still terrified at this point. We get back to the barracks. I walk him back up to his room and push him in the closet. I close the door and sleep against it the entire night. The next morning, he ends up asking me why he was sleeping in the closet. I told him the story, and that he was not drinking for a very long fucking, emphasis on the fucking time. So kiddies, that's my story about fear. It's not your life you end up fearing for the most. It's the lives of those you love. Till DR. Fuck you. I just poured my heart out. Story 2. This isn't my story, but a former teacher told it to me and swears it is true. She said that when she was a child, she shared a room with her younger sister. One night, she was in her bed, and her sister told her to look toward the door. She looked up and saw the silhouette of a man standing in the doorway. She had a light switch right next to her bed, so she turned it on, and there was nobody in the doorway. They called for their dad, and he came in asking them what was wrong. They told him what they had seen, and he said it was probably just their eyes playing tricks on them. The next day, my teacher went downstairs and saw her father sitting at the kitchen table just staring. She asked him what was wrong, and he said, "Was the man you saw a tall man?" She claims that each member of the family saw the silhouette a number of times over the years, and each time it was the same thing. They would turn on a light, and there would be nobody there. I've been creeped out ever since she told me this story. Story 3. Junior year of high school, I get off a couple of bus stops early to hang out at a friend's house after school. We're playing video games when my friend's mom gets a call from mine angrily telling me to come home. I thought I was busted for not coming right home, but she seemed particularly angry and scared at this infraction. When I get home, my mom, sister, and sister's friend are kind of frazzled and in shock. My mom is angrily asking me where I was and what I was doing after school. She doesn't believe my story of going directly to my friend's house after school and being there the whole time. I'm sent to my room. A few minutes later, my sister comes in and asks me the same thing, to which I respond with the same answer, and ask, why is everyone acting so weird and freaked out? While I was at my friend's house, my mom heard a voice saying my name from her bedroom window. When she looks outside to our backyard, she sees my sister, her friend, and a guy with no shirt on hugging my sister's friend from behind. My mom swears it was me and goes out back to reprimand me for shirtlessly hugging on my sister's friend. When my mom gets outside, she just finds the two of them. There have only been the two of them out there the entire time. My mom doesn't believe them because she clearly heard a man's voice and saw the shirtless guy out there. She interrogates them as to my whereabouts because she thinks they are covering for me and I was somewhere in hiding. So, here's the spooky part. My sister's friend came over because she needed someone to talk to. It was the 1-year anniversary of her fiancé's suicide. Her fiancé and I share the same name. My mom had no context of any of this when she saw the male figure out back with her. Till DR, my mom saw the ghost of my sister's friend's finance. Story 4. I was 16 and woke up in the middle of the night to seeing my clothes being rustled about in my doorway. After washing my clothes, I like to hang dry them on my doorframe. I notice some really gray, veiny-looking legs, and then I see these really long, pointed sticks moving through my clothes. It took me a second, but my sleepy eyes adjusted to see one of the most grotesque, demon-looking motherfuckers I have ever seen. He was extremely skinny and had a distended stomach. His skin was gray and veiny, and those long sticks were his fingers. His chin was long, his eyes had no lids on them and were unusually big. His tiny mouth was in a pucker and moved like he was eating an imaginary lollipop. His hunched back looked as though it tore out of the strange hospital gown he was wearing. He just stared at me, and I tried to scream my grandmother awake, who was sharing a room with me for the weekend. He wouldn't stop staring, and I stared back and tried to shake my grandmother awake. I started noticing other things about him, like how large and cone-like his head was, and how hairless and shriveled he looked as he stood still, surprised I could see him. My grandmother woke up, looked towards the door, and he was gone. In the weeks leading to this encounter, I had been experiencing strange things in my house, like my bedroom door slamming and locking on its own. One night, I woke up to what felt like several hands touching my feet and legs, and horrible nightmares. After the experience with this strange gray man, I told my parents, and they had my room exorcised. If an exorcism really made those horrible things stop, or gave me peace of mind from things I was manifesting myself, all I know is I don't experience those things anymore, and I'll never sleep with the door open again. Tiltion doctor, I saw a demon who was surprised I could see him and had to exorcise my room. Not sure if real, or I manifested it in my stressed-out teenage brain. Story 5. When I was in elementary school, my family decided to add on to our house. So, we hired an architect and contractor. We live in an old colonial home that was built to be historically correct. 200-year-old softwood floors, proper paint colors, etc. Because of this, my parents chose to have all of the wood trim painted in the addition. The contractor didn't want to, because we actually bought quality wood, and he thought it was a waste of time. So, we ended up hiring another contractor after about a year of arguing and having almost no work done on the house, even though the contractor and his team were consistently being paid. The new contractor was one that my parents' lawyer had met through church. Most of his team also went to that same church. Now, we always tried to be hospitable towards the workmen and would offer them drinks and snacks, particularly in the summer. We live in a hot, humid climate that is pretty much unbearable. So, my mom would send me outside with lemonade and the like for the workers. They were all really nice, and I remember having nice conversations with them about whatever now 9-year-old me found interesting. I particularly remember this one guy named Kenny. The actually contractor never showed up on the job, and Kenny was put in charge. Kind of like a gopher. He was always really nice to me. Anyways, a few months after they finally finished the addition on our house, I think it took about 2.5 years, Kenny's name is published in the newspaper. He was put in prison for charges of pedophilia. Before he worked at our house, He had been on a list of sex offenders. The contractor found this detail about his employee unnecessary to share with my parents. I was an elementary-aged girl at the time. My brother was in middle school. My parents would leave us home alone with the workmen there on occasion. Thinking about this still gives me the creeps. I can't. Story 6. This will get buried, but oh well. When I was about 4, my dad was a mechanic and found a little ugly chihuahua in a junkyard. He brought him home, and my parents were going to take him to a shelter, but I begged and begged to keep him. I even swore I'd watch him since we lived in the middle of nowhere in the plains of the Panhandle in Texas. Anyway, they let me keep him, mainly I think because they didn't think he'd survive. Fast forward 5 years, the dog grows up to be the most beautiful, big dog you ever saw, named Ernie after Sesame Street. By this point, I was allowed to drive a golf cart to my grandparents' house about 2 miles away after school. The distance was pretty much just big field with a few fences. One day, the battery went dead in the golf cart halfway there. Ernie had followed me like always, and we started walking the difference. All of a sudden, Ernie turns towards me and starts growling. This was a massive dog, and I was terrified. I just seen Old Yeller too and was convinced that he had rabies. I tried to run past him, and he jumped on me before I made 2 steps. He knocked me down. He stopped growling and just stood on top of me for a minute. When he got off, I started running towards my house. He just stayed there growling at something imaginary. I told my dad, and he grabbed his gun, presumably to kill Ernie, and I was freaking out. Like an hour later, I heard a gunshot. Imagine my surprise when my dad and Ernie came back unharmed. Apparently, there had been a nest of huge rattlesnakes in the ditch ahead of me, and Ernie had kept me from walking right through it. I had never noticed because I usually drove over the other side where the trail was. According to my very freaked-out dad, there was no way I would have missed them. Ernie must have heard them and saved me. But I talked my parents into saving a chihuahua, who turned into a big dog who saved my life from rattlesnakes. Story 7. I've told this story before, but this is an appropriate thread for it. One night when I was 13 years old, I had gotten my period for the first time, and ended up sleeping on my back. I am an avid side sleeper, so this is a really weird position for me. I was dreaming, and in that dream, I was sitting in a chair. I leaned it back on its back legs, and suddenly the chair started to slowly lean further and further back, until I drifted into the eternity below me. This freaked me out, and I jolted awake. When I awoke, there was a figure hovering directly above my face, and all I saw was a hooded white, flat ovular, and relatively featureless face, with big ovular glassy eyes, and an expression like it was determined to devour my eternal soul. The face was humanoid, very two-dimensional, with thin, quivering, angry lips, and 2 holes where its nose would be, with eyebrows arched high up onto its forehead. I could feel an unworldly hate burning right through me as it loomed over me. It was absolutely the most helpless I have ever felt, and would ever feel, because it was more than just my life I felt was at stake. I tried to move, scream, breathe, anything, and couldn't. It was paralyzing me with its hate. I finally was able to let out the tiniest whimper, and as soon as the sound escaped me, it stood straight up and paced back and forth at the foot of my bed, still staring. It was like a force field was erected around me, and the frustration of it trying to get at me again was radiating throughout the room. Looked like a starving tiger behind glass, longing to lunge at its vulnerable prey, if only it weren't for the barrier between us. It was tall, almost all the way to the ceiling tall, and very thin. Wearing a long black cloak that covered everything except that terrifying face. I realized that it hadn't been floating over me. It had stood at the foot of my bed and leaned over it to hover its face over mine. I sat up in my bed, still frozen, just staring at it. My closet door behind it was cracked a few inches, and it swooped in there and peered out at me, never having broken eye contact. It continued to stare, quivering with hate and frustration until it slowly faded away. I turned my light on, and it stayed on at night for a long time. I never slept with that closet door open again, and I didn't sleep again that night. I stayed the night in the living room with all of the lights on, just sitting on the couch. I later dismissed it as sleep paralysis for several years. It was a very believable and plausible explanation. Then I became friends with a girl who confided in me and told me a story. She was up late at night by herself with her door open. Something out in the living room by the kitchen caught her eye, and when she looked at it, she saw a figure standing there, beckoning her to approach it. She looked away, refocused on it, and it was still there. When she described it, she described the exact same creature that had attacked me. We each got a sketchbook and drew what we saw, and when she showed me hers, I was staring at my attacker all over again. She had never heard my story before telling hers. TLDR was attacked by a scary figure one night, dismissed it as sleep paralysis until a friend described the exact same creature to me that had plagued her. She didn't know about my experience until after she had told me about hers. I'm having a hard time finding exactly what I saw, but this face is pretty similar. Just flatten the nose cheekbones into nothing and close the mouth into a thin line with bigger, more rounded eyes. Story 8. I've seen the exact same thing you're talking about. Actually, 3 times. It's just sleep paralysis. Terrifying as shit, and I hate it, but nothing to be rationally frightened of. You know how when you let out a sound it backed up, and you kind of got the ability to move back? Same here. The monster is basically an exaggeration of really basic, instinctual fears. That's why it's the same monster for you, me, and your friend. Story 9. I was in high school. The bus had just dropped me off, and I was unlocking the front door when a grown man came onto the lawn and asked me if I had any money. I said no. He kept approaching me. I got the door unlocked, and then Bear, my 100-pound, solid black, territorial working German shepherd, came barking and growling, practically frothing at the mouth. The creep took one look at Bear and noped the fuck out of there. I don't like to think what would have happened if I hadn't had Bear. Story 10. This is a story that happened to my dad. Now, my dad has never been one to make up a story like this before, and he can't even tell the story without getting goosebumps. It happened about 6 months ago, when my parents, we on vacation at a friend's beach house. Our friends always told us about the place next door, and that it has had 5 new owners over the 3 years they have owned the place. The last guy who lived there actually committed suicide about 3 weeks before this, but we don't know why. My parents just arrived there for the night. Everything is fine all day until they are getting ready for bed. My dad starts to smell gas. Turns out the pilot light went out, so he goes outside to turn the gas off. While he is outside, he said he started to get chills, and the entire time outside, he felt nervous. Once he finds the shutoff, he hears someone say, "What are you doing?" The voice was so real and pronounced that he actually responded with, "Shutting off the gas." He then realized what he just did, and froze. Looked around, and didn't see anyone. Thought it was my mother at first, but after freaking out and running inside, she was in the bathroom brushing her teeth. My dad couldn't sleep that night at all. They ended up driving home at 3 a.m. They told our friends, owners of the house, and they looked mortified. They told us the guy who committed suicide not too long ago did so by gassing himself in the house. My dad can't tell this story without getting goosebumps. I don't think I've ever seen my dad legitimately scared in his entire life. Could be a fake story. But the fear he gets in his eyes when he told me the story the first time, I don't think you can fake that.